So let's say you found the skeleton. How would you tell people that? You personally, how would you decide?
Well, interesting question. I don't know. I'd have to do some research on that.
Hey everybody, welcome to Dapper Reacts 104, Back to Babel, which is of course a continuation of our little mini-series here on Bodhi Hodge's book about the Tower of Babel, in which he says some of the dumbest things. We were just leaving off with him saying, hey, how come linguists don't investigate language isolates to see if they're actually connected to other language groups? Which, is actually a thing they do a lot of. It's a significant fraction of the linguistics literature that is published in peer-reviewed linguistics journals. It's a real thing they do all the time.
It sure is.
It's very frustrating, and I'll be honest with you. As I was telling my co-hosts here, I was angry with Bodhi for about 36 hours after that. I was actively Bodhi, yeah. I'm not a linguist, but still, on behalf of linguists out there, I was very annoyed. I am, of course, here with both Vishanti and Kip Davis, and Vishanti is sporting some lovely feeders as an ear cuff piece there, so, and that is because you guys, a while back, hit her private, that she doesn't always tell, super chat donations goal to get her to wear feeders, and then for months she was just like, I'm not feeling it today. I'm like, okay. So she eventually did it though. And so I want to do a quick how's it going with the panel. So Vishanti, how's it going? I think you're muted.
I just decided the title of my memoir is going to be I Did This Eventually.
There you go. Kip, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Yesterday, I drove back over the spine of North America to get home. And I have to say, there's always a little bit of trepidation and humility that goes into driving over the Canadian Rockies. As it's sort of a landscape of snow and vehicular carnage. Smashed up vehicles, rolled vehicles every 70 or 80 kilometers lying in the ditch, and I hit a lot of snow between Merritt and Hope. It was snowing very heavily, and there was only one lane. I mean, technically they don't actually close lanes, but drivers recognize where you're supposed to put your car and where you shouldn't when the highway is covered in snow. So it was a bit slow. It was a little dicey here and there, but all got home safe and sound. So Happy New Year, you guys.
Happy New Year. Yes, it is a New Year. It's 2025. It's already been a long year here.
Really Gentiles. Yep. New Year was 3 months ago.
Well,
yeah, whatever.
Look, there's a lot of New Years out there. This is the Western secular New Year. It's not even the Western ecclesiastical New Year. That's not for a few more months. So, whatever. This is just the continuation of the Roman calendar that became the secular calendar in most of the West.
Lunar New Year is at the end of the month.
That is also a fun time. Kip, does anyone ever
Especially in my neighborhood
dip down onto US I-90 just to avoid having to go through the harsher, more northern sections and then just come back up?
Yeah, I think maybe people do. That's a little far south, though, from where I was.
Yeah,
I was coming from Calgary, which is, I think it's already 250 or 300 kilometers away from the U.S. border.
Well, then why are you even there? Come on,
why was I there?
We all know that 90+% of Canadians are within 10 kilometers of the border or something.
Yes. So maybe it's closer. I don't think it is though.
But it doesn't matter.
It's Yeah. So, but it's far, and I'm a seasoned. When you're a seasoned winter driver, this sort of stuff it doesn't bother you. It just you recognize your own limitations,
Yeah.
and you stay within them.
I do remember
So that's
when I was first driving out to my the ship that I was stationed on in the Navy. I carpooled with another sailor who was from Hawaii, and it was the dead of winter, and we were in like the Midwest, and a blizzard hits. And at that point, he was driving, and I'm like, "Okay, man, we need to pull over." He's like, "Why? There's just some snow." I was like, "Look, the snow isn't going to stop, and if we don't pull over now, we're going to get stuck in probably 4 or 5 feet of snow on the middle of the highway, and in order we'll have to turn the car off so we don't get carbon monoxide poisoning, and then we're going to have to cuddle in a sleeping bag together in the back seat. So unless that's how you want to spend tonight, you need to pull off and find the next motel."
Yep.
He was like, "Wait, really?" I'm like, "Yes. So like either you need to start liking me a whole lot more than you do right now, or we need to find a motel." So we pulled off and
And
found a motel. And then he had
sometimes
his first snowball fight of his entire life.
Oh, how exciting.
Yes. So that is what we did the next day, is we had a quick snowball fight.
I have had my fair share of unplanned motel stays
It happens.
with 3 small children. It's fun.
Yeah, I just broke out my original Xbox and played some Star Wars Battlefront 2.
That's wow. Yeah, see, that would work.
Is it Battlefront 2 where they have the most downvoted comment of all of Reddit history?
It was the second Battlefront 2, the EA version of Battlefront 2 that came out. Because remember,
Second Battlefront 2.
way back in the days of the original Xbox, there was Star Wars Battlefront and Battlefront 2. And Star Wars Battlefront 2 is still an excellent game, which you can buy on Steam to this day, and it is still excellent on Steam. Sure, the graphics are super dated, but it has all sorts of wonderful like campaign options, multiplayer campaign options, galactic invasion, all sorts of cool stuff.
It's just not like paywalled for all the stuff that people wanted the game for.
Yeah, you can just hop in and start playing as Darth Vader. You don't have to pay like $5,000 to unlock Darth Vader or play for like, the next 80,000 hours. All right, but we're not really here to talk about excellent Xbox games that were then later remade and ruined by EA. We're primarily here to talk about Bodhi, who is remaking linguistics and ruining it. So, I mean, there is still a theme connection there. Before we get into that,
nice. That was very smooth.
Thank you. I do have a couple super chats to read. Ben Thick Tunicate for £10 says, "There once was a man who lived by the sea, who always had time for a lovely cream tea, except when the weather was fair, then he'd have an eclair, which he would often call an AIG, and we will take a drink. Thank you very much."
Thank you, Terry Rana. A sense of pride and accomplishment.
Yeah, that was
Imagine that being your legacy.
It has since been surpassed in terms of downvotes, but it spent a while as the most downvoted comment in Reddit history.
It'll always be the most downvoted in my heart.
There you go. Yeah, basically it was like, hey, you don't want to grind for 50,000 hours to unlock your favorite Star Wars character? We thought that
or just
making
pay
you
us
do
a bunch
that
of extra money.
Right. We thought that making you do that would give you a sense of pride and accomplishment. Like, nope. Sorry, it doesn't actually. Roshan, a lipstick Equus Keller for $9.99 US says, "I turned on the heat for the first time this year and blew a circuit because the entire max current of all items plugging to the side of the apartment covering 2 rooms is 15 amps. AIG is a bag of dicks." All right, so that can be a problem. And what you want to do is, I was an electrician for a while, advice. If you can't separate these items onto different circuits, start slowly plugging in the ones that have high startup currents, which is going to be anything with an electrical motor. The bigger the motor, generally speaking, the bigger the startup current is going to be. And then give it a good 4 or 5 seconds before you try to plug in something else. Because what happens is when you first plug in an electrical motor, it hasn't built up any magnetic fields that are in opposition to the current flow that's initially rushing through, which motors generally build up. That's one of the biggest reasons that they're a power draw. And until that happens, you're going to have a low impedance, which is going to cause a high current. But that current is going to quickly draw down because as the motor runs, it very quickly builds up those counter electromagnetic fields, which will increase the impedance of the overall circuit. So yeah, just do it slowly, starting with the biggest motors, work your way down, and then finally you can do like electronic stuff. And if one of the electronics bits, as the thing that actually trips the circuit breaker. You want to see if you can find a different way to power that from a different circuit. And be careful about stringing together a whole bunch of extension cords. It might seem tempting, but it's dangerous. So, let's see. Then we've got Lizzie B, who's been a member for 5 months. It says, Mothra, Happy New Year, Ghidorah, and AID's a bag of dicks, so we'll take a drink. By the way, I am drinking coffee with sugar and whiskey. That is my drink. Let's see. Dark Law Dragon, who's been a member for 29 months, sends a Godzilla AIG is a bag of trouser snakes, and we'll take a drink for that. Thank you very much. Dutch Tunicate Demonic Selection for $2 says, can I have snow? It's just cold here with a Godzilla. I mean, I'm not in charge of the weather. You want to contact Maddie. Maddie from Science Side Up. She is in charge of the weather.
But that is objectively not as good.
I'll be honest. I like a little light snowfall if it's going to be below freezing anyway. Much better than freezing rain, for that matter. Freezing rain is the worst.
That's the worst.
Although I will be honest, it is pretty on trees because then you get like that, like the entire tree is like glazed in the ice and it's like dripping down. From an aesthetic point,
but then they break.
Well, yeah,
and they fall on you.
Yeah, look,
that's bad.
Overall, freezing rain is bad, but there is the silver lining that for a little while, trees look freaking awesome with the freezing rain on them.
Fair.
Yeah. Silver Phoenix Rising for $20 says, yay, I finally caught a live show with a big smiley emoji. I hope everyone's having a good time. I am. And can we please get a plushie or at least a sticker of Dr. Kip's Pokemon character with a winky face? I think that is going to have to be up to a Dr. Kip thing. Kip, people want to see a Mudkip plushie. Careful, though, because Nintendo and Niantic, super litigious.
Is that right?
Oh, absurdly litigious.
Wow. Well, I mean, I guess I get it. Do you think the likeness is that close? Maybe it is.
I mean, there's the likeness, but there's also the pun.
Yeah. They don't I mean, true. That's true.
And then Fade to Gray, don't build the Tower of Bubble Bobble has gifted 5 Dapper Dinosaur memberships, so we'll take 5 drinks for that. I'm gonna be wired and slightly buzzed all at the same time. It's gonna be great. I got 3, and then Roshan Lipstick Equus Keller says for $1.99, Dapper lives for Tucson blizzards. Yeah, it actually has snowed once since I've lived here. It was about a 1/4 inch or like a centimeter or so. And it was gone within about 2 hours of sunrise. But a dog who was owned by someone who doesn't live here anymore was very excited. We'll get a couple more drinks in for that gifted memberships. And for $5, Joshua McGee says, I say Wintry Mix is still the worst. Look, it's pretty bad, but I still say that Freezing Rain is the actual worst. I mean, for one thing, it's so slippery. It's slipperier than Wintry.
Yes.
Juliana Delicato, who's been a member for 15 months, says, AIG...
It's Portuguese.
Well, I'm going to struggle through it. AIG é uma bolsa de tunicados pelágicos. And then we get or Godzilla, we'll take a drink for that. And then...
And since he kind of butchered that, I'll help you out, because Juliana deserves to have the Portuguese red.
Look, people know what happens when they put...
AIG é uma bolsa de tunicados pelágicos.
Oh, is it a J in there?
Soft G.
Oh, well,
Soft G.
How would I know? Look, the fact that
How is it that you know the pronunciation rules for like half a dozen other Romance languages and not this one?
Because do you know how much time I've spent studying Portuguese? None.
It's barely different than French.
Okay, that doesn't mean that they have to have the same rules. In fact, they don't have the same rules. If I read that in French, it would sound different. Silver Phoenix Rising for $2 says Kip's Pokemon character is super cute, and it is. That's true.
That's true. And I should point out that that Vadim's not wrong here. That the plushie must also come with a toque.
Yeah, and glasses.
And by the way, you need to wear the one that Dave got you. I want to see it.
Oh, do you want me to put that on?
Yeah,
I mean, that's why I just said...
Is that why you tuned in?
That's why I tuned in. Yeah. It's definitely not because it's my show. JT, who's been a member for 24 months, says, hit that like button. AAG is a baggins of Bilbos. It's true. I'm getting the feeling now that the audience is actually just trying to delay the onset of the Bodhi. Like, they're like, if we just give him enough super chats, he won't actually read any Bodhi Hodge. And that's true, technically. Nether 6 Hair for 5 Euro says, Matt Powell says evolution says caterpillars killed the dinosaurs. Yeah, he does say that. Clearly, Mothra, with a Mothra emoji, is better than Godzilla emoji, and AIG is a bag of dicks. Oh, nice.
So this is...
Take a drink for that.
Powell's got a little pom-pom.
This is new. This is my only toque with a pom-pom. Because when I was a kid and my mom used to knit me toques with pom-poms, all the other kids would make fun of me and they would steal my toque. So I developed an aversion to toques with pom-poms. So yeah, but and it's one of those things, right? I just never even thought of getting another one ever. But Dave from Toast to Toast fame gave me this toque last week. He and I went out for dinner to the craft beer market in Calgary, which is very good. And I had a delicious coconut IPA that they make.
That reminds me,
which is really nice.
Shanti, one of these days we got to find a time to get Paul to watch the only other 2 Hellraiser movies that exist, because there are only 3 Hellraiser movies.
Correct.
Total.
Correct.
Yep.
Yeah.
There's only 3. Anyone who says otherwise is clearly lying. Don't believe them.
Mm-hmm.
All right, but now that the super chats have calmed down just a little bit, I think it is time for us to we'll scroll up a little bit to remember where we were. So let's see. I'll just do a little recap. So basically, Bodhi is saying here, when isolates don't match up to nearby languages, linguists apparently just pretend that that's all they're going to do, and that there's no possible connection between other languages elsewhere, which is not at all what they do. In fact, one of the most famous things in linguistics is crazy far-flung ideas for language families, where it's like, what if we could connect Basque to Chinese? Like, yeah, what if you could? Right?
Let's try and see what happens.
But that's the thing, they do. They're like, let's try and see what happens. And usually it's like, no luck. But,
it just fails.
Yeah. And then there's Bodhi like, oh, Christians, by which he just means young Earth creationists. Remember that. When Bodhi says Christian, what you should think is young Earth creationists. He's not thinking about theistic evolutionists. He's not even thinking about non-Protestants, right? If you were to point out, that, I don't know, some Eastern
Certainly
Orthodox
not
person or Catholic person or Mormon, yeah. If you were like, well, Brigham Young said that, he'd be like, I don't care. If you were like, well,
he'd be like, he's a fake Christian.
He'd be like, that makes it worse.
Yeah, if you were like, well, Saint whatever of Milan said this other thing, he'd be like, I don't care. Like,
except they really love Augustine.
Yeah, they do like Augustine.
Yeah.
So that's because a lot of Augustine's theology still shines through in Protestantism. So
yeah,
that's a big part of it.
DM Wing was asking which 3 Hellraisers. Well, there's the Hellraiser 1, Hellraiser 2, which is, what's the subtitle for that one?
I don't remember the subtitles.
Either way, Doug Bradley is playing the Hell Priest, and then there's a reboot where Jamie Clayton is playing the Hell Priest, and it is just...
All 3 excellent movies.
So,
and can you imagine if they just started making more Hellraiser movies and grabbing random-ass horror scripts and then shoving the Hell Priest in for no reason?
Yeah.
And calling it Hellraiser?
That would just be really terrible all the way down, and that would be a waste of talent.
It would be like putting Ferris Bueller and half the cast of The Simpsons in a Godzilla movie for no reason.
Mm-hmm.
Things people shouldn't do.
Which also didn't happen, because that would be a shame.
Roshan, a lipstick to Equus Keller for $4.99 says, or connecting Japonic to ancient place names like Southern Korea. Yeah. I mean, look, linguists try this stuff all the time, and now, sitting back with our hindsight where it failed, we can laugh at them. But, to pretend that they don't try is absolute craziness. Alright, but here's where we should start, and who wants to start us off?
Me.
Okay.
Okay.
Scroll there, yeah.
But we should also consider the constructed languages approach. Some may well be isolates or conlings. when people are left to themselves, they have likely automatically lost a big portion of the words from their root languages. It is rare for someone to know all the words of their language. It's true. From there, people come up with new words and continue to lose old words in subsequent generations. We do this in English too, by the way. We add new words yearly. For example, ain't.
Okay.
I'm going to rant about that in a second.
Yeah.
And forget many words that have mostly fallen into disuse. Examples, groovy or sibilation, neither of which have been forgotten or whatever. Given some time, be it decades or centuries, an isolated group can develop almost an entirely new language.
Okay.
Like, is that the best? Sorry, I just gotta say, is that really the best he can do?
Yes.
Of adding a new language.
So there's a few things. Yeah. First of all, ain't is not a new word. Ain't goes back.
That has been around for centuries.
Yeah. Ain't goes back well before Shakespeare. Ain't is a very long-standing word. Now, it has always been sort of like a sign of a like non-high class dialect. It's generally been associated.
I don't care because it accurately communicates the ideas that the speaker is wanting to communicate. Therefore, it is legit.
Anyone who tells you that ain't isn't proper English, all that person is telling you is that one, they're stuck up, and two, their idea of proper English is highly associated with basically sociolects associated with the wealthy and the academic elite. Now, if you were to ask me, hey, Dapper, can you read over this paper I'm attempting to submit for like publication in a journal, and you had the word ain't in there, I would absolutely underline it and say you need to change this. But that's because you're trying to go in
most of the time.
You're trying to publish in a place with an actual.
Don't use colloquial speech.
Yeah, you really shouldn't.
Papers.
You really shouldn't be using contractions at all. Like.
Yeah.
So.
Well.
I mean,
it might let you wiggle around, but it's like slang is just generally not something that you.
Also, Nether Six Hair.
It's only
been a member for 13 months. Says St. Augustine's Book of Nature. Therefore, Bible is ignored. I wouldn't go quite that far, but there's definitely some places where St. Augustine's take overrides certain ideas that are in the Bible.
I was going to point out that within my field, it is only recently, like within the last 10, maybe 15 years, become acceptable for authors to write in the first person, as opposed to like the third person.
It still weirds me out when I see an academic work that uses the first person, whether singular or plural. I don't object or anything, but it's like, it's just not what I'm used to, right?
Yeah.
It would be like if I was reading like the Quran and then someone used like chat Arabic for one surah, I'd be like, what are you doing? Why would you do this?
I'm just so thankful that it's become an accepted convention, because it just always felt weird to me writing in the third person.
The thing is, it felt weird to me at first, but then I got used to it, and then it just became my default.
Yeah.
For like formal writing.
I'm usually not the kind of person that like would raise too much of a fuss about certain things, like just because I'm like, okay, fine, it's just the protocol for the place where I'm going. That's fine, whatever. But it just felt pompous. Even when I was in high school, I was like,
it's supposed to be the opposite. That's the thing, is it's supposed to be the opposite.
And I'm like, that's not the way it is. That's not the way it's perceived. And even when I was a teenager, I was
that's because it became the way that like pompous people wrote, because it was the academic standard. And so I think it's like a pendulum thing, right? Where they're like, okay, we should stop using the first person because that seems like we're too full of ourselves. And then it was like, okay, but people are noticing you're still full of yourselves in the third person. And now the third person feels full of yourself.
No, it's even worse. Yes.
Roshina Lipstick Equus Color for $1.99 says, taint? I mean...
Taint.
With T apostrophe AIN apostrophe T. Also a pretty good
Unrelated,
conjunction.
Barry Lyndon is available for free on YouTube now.
Nice.
Great movie.
Aiden Matthew Galea for €5 says, Bodhi, the kind of guy who willingly stand inside the Richard blasting chamber if it meant disproving Darwin. Yeah, he probably would. Okay, so here's another few things here. So one is, there is a gigantic gulf between a neologism and a constructed language, right? A neologism is just adding a new lexeme into an existing language. It is a trivial thing that people do all the time, all over the world, every day, without anyone ever really noticing that much. constructing an entirely new language is very, very different. And I can't tell if Bodhi actually is saying that maybe language isolates are actually constructed languages in the way that Klingon or Esperanto is, or if he's actually just saying, well, they're highly divergent languages that have lots of neologisms, because those aren't the same thing, right? A language that has diverged a lot from its relatives and is full of neologisms is not the same as someone one day sat down and was like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to invent Euskara. And can I prove that no one sat down one day to invent Euskara? No, I can't. But there's no good evidence that that happened. And also, the earliest thing that we have that can reasonably be called a constructed language isn't until like the late medieval period with like lingua ignota. It was devised by a nun. Well, I mean, she said it was revealed to her by God, but like, okay, whatever. I don't think that was actually true.
I would like to make a case that the Voynich manuscript also invented a language.
I mean, I'm pretty staunchly of the opinion that it's just a hoax and that there's no underlying language.
Well, yeah, but it intended to be like within its own little universe. It intended to be a language, and I feel like even though we don't know what the author thought maybe people would take from it, I would like make that case. Probably like it's gibberish to us, but
I feel like it was
really
gibberish to the author. But that's the thing, right? Like that's
I own
okay.
a facsimile printing of that, and nice. It's so cool. Like when you get to the fold-out pages, they reproduce those accurately, and it looks really cool.
By the way, there is actually a technical term for that kind of thing, where it's like something that's supposed to evoke the sense of writing, but that doesn't actually say anything. It's called asemic writing, which basically just means without meaning. And the Voynich manuscript is probably the most famous example, but it's far from the only example.
Mm.
And actually, at least one of my thumbnails uses some asemic writing. It was my take on the VHS, first VHS logo that I did as a thumbnail. And I wanted to have labels on some of the VHS tapes that make up the mosaic of the skull. But I didn't actually want to sit down and come up with them. So I just used some procedural textures and made them look kind of like cursive writing. And so numerous people have said, hey, that's a clever use of language. I'm like, nope, there's no language there. It's nice that you think there is, though, because that was my intent. DM Carl Ipsum Wing, who's been a member for 30 months and is at the annual level, says, sibilation is what Sibian... sibilation is what a Sibian does, isn't it? Sure, we can go with that. We'll go with that. And then there's a whole bunch of just drink emojis, so we'll take a drink. Thank you very much. Roshan Lipstick Equus Keller for $1.99 says, when was Enochian? I feel like that was in like the 18th century, wasn't it?
Medieval.
Well, if it was in the...
I mean, there were. This is something for Dr. Justin Sledge, but I
thought it was early modern.
That, like, people writing in what they called Enochian goes back to like Middle Ages.
Yeah, but I think the question is about like what current books of magic would call Enochian. When does that go back to? Okay, so 17th century. So it's early modern. Is the answer to that? That's the early modern period. Let's see. Mark Right-Handed Sith Smith for $2 says, Dapper Dinosaur, hobbyist linguist. I think that would probably be an acceptable term. Like doing linguisticsy stuff is sort of a hobby of mine. Heather talks to randos on trains, Coon, for $2. Says, what about Enochian? Yeah, so again, oh no, I guess it's 16th century. I guess we could say it's like the end of the medieval period, beginning of the modern period. We're in that transition between the two.
Yeah, Anonymous Pie, I'm feeling you. The whole Firefox's crashing tabs on YouTube thing the last few weeks has been driving me batty.
I've actually been having some of that on Opera. It
specifically does it on YouTube. It's been just so freaking frustrating.
I've been having some of that on Opera. I've more than once paused a video and come back to a crash tab. All right. Anyway, let's hear what Bodhi has to misunderstand about a proto-language. You want to keep going, or should we hand it off to Kip?
No, Kip, you can take this one.
A proto-language? In an evolutionary framework, means it's bad.
Mm-hmm.
The concept is that language slowly developed among evolving humans and originated with a proto-language.
No, okay.
Or the ancestor of all languages.
Nope.
This language was supposedly primitive, think primate-like.
Oh my god.
It was surely based... Oh, geez, this is bad, guys.
It's extremely
bad. It was surely based on grunts and other basic animal sounds since people were supposed to be animals.
So we're gonna have to take this apart.
Rice.
Okay, so first, a
Jeez.
proto-language is not what Bodhi is describing, because what Bodhi is describing is like not quite a language, but getting there. That's not what a proto-language is. A proto-language is a reconstructed common ancestor language for a group of related languages. They are not reconstructed as being primitive or made of basic animal sounds, which, by the way, I don't exactly know what that means. Because, hey, here's a fun fact. Humans are animals, and every sound any human has ever made has been an animal sound. Because that's how it works.
And I don't spend I don't spend any time on the linguistic work of like early human speech.
Mhm.
But I'm very doubtful that linguists are going, yeah, there was one language from which all other languages flow.
So that hypothetical language actually has a name. It's called Proto-World. And there are linguists who take it with varying degrees of like seriousness. There have been attempts to reconstruct some basic Proto-World based on like far-flung cross-linguistic similarities. They have not generally held up with any rigor, and it is currently an open question as to whether or not human language has a single linguistic origin or not. But whether or not it does, the common ancestor of all human languages, if there is such or were such a thing, would almost certainly be a grammatically and lexically complex thing, similar to the level of complexity we have in modern languages. Because we have this weird idea that like the level of complexity that languages have goes like up or down through time, and it's not really true. Right? Like people will say, well, Old English was more complicated than Modern English. Was it? Modern English has a way more complex system for verb forms.
I think it's it's determining what you mean by that, right?
Mhm.
Complicated in what sense?
Right. And that's why linguists don't really talk about that.
Complexity. This is the the argument I frequently have with Hellenistic priority people like the pseudo scholar Amon Hillman, who insists that complexity is determined by lexeme count. Really? Is it? Is that what we're going with?
No, that's especially since total lexeme count in a language reflects very, very little on actual complexity of sentences by speakers.
Right.
Because one thing is, so English has an absurdly high lexeme count. Like, it's ridiculous. But most English speakers don't even use a tiny fraction of those lexemes in a day. By the way, in case anyone's wondering, a lexeme is a unit of meaning in a language that basically is the kind of thing you would put into a dictionary. Lexeme is a more formal word than word, because it turns out the word word is actually poorly defined cross-linguistically. Really hard to figure out where a word is. Like, try asking a Sumerologist where the word boundaries are in Sumerian.
Right.
Yeah. I know, because I've asked one, and it was like, I don't know. Like, yep, exactly. So,
it's too bad that you weren't tuning into the Toast to Toast stream last night, Dapper, because Shannon Q actually broke in, took over Paul's chair, and discussed glossolalia for a while.
My favorite.
And how people who, break into tongues or whatever, they only use phonemes from languages that they're familiar with.
It's more than that. If
somebody is an English speaker and they break into, like, glossolalia, they don't start using phonemes from, like, Igbo or Mandarin. Mm-hmm. It's always stuff that they've heard in English.
It's actually more extreme than that. They also generally follow the phonotactic rules of languages that they're familiar with. So not only do they not use sounds from other languages that they're not familiar with, they only construct syllables that work in the languages that they speak commonly.
Mm-hmm.
So if you hear someone in...
There was a whole, 15-minute detour in the stream for that, so...
It's one of the ways why I've very long been, glossolalia is just a thing that humans can do. You're just coming up with gibberish. I actually had this discussion with a Pentecostal one. He was like, I was carried away by the Spirit. That. And I was like, okay, but every time anyone does this, and I go through, the thing, and he's like, I know what I felt. I'm like, okay.
Uh-huh.
Sure. I'll get a couple super chats.
I am not questioning that they felt it. but
Yeah.
it's not an actual language.
My
as
first
described in the
year,
text.
my first year of Bible college, I had another student basically walk me through the steps of how to get good
At
in the
glossolalia.
tongues.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
When it double shata.
Yeah.
All right, we got a few.
And one of them was just he's like, first you just start saying whatever comes into your head, and he says that you have to fight through the instinct that it sounds ridiculous.
Yes.
And then he's like, he says over time, it just starts to feel normal.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, anything you do enough is going to eventually start to feel normal. We had a few super
I'm
chats.
with Vadim on this. He says, I'll wait for a speaker in tongues to use the sh sound. It's possibly the hardest phoneme in all of Russian, to be honest. I still struggle with it.
I want someone speaking in tongues to get some like ancient reconstructed Hebrew pronunciation going on, like full on like differences between emphatic consonants and like voiced pharyngeal fricatives and whatnot.
Yeah, I was gonna say, bring back the like super ancient pronunciation of ein.
Yeah, we're going like basically like the level of the stratum of Hebrew when it's barely differentiated from like Proto-West Semitic.
Mm-hmm.
That's when people start coming up with that and their native language is English, then I'll be impressed. Metageeky Platypus Warlock for $5 says Gordon Rugg did an interesting stats analysis of Voynich in the mid-aughts, demonstrating how one at the time could construct a semi-consistent language. I mean, look, there have been lots of studies on it that have said that maybe it's consistent with some linguistic content. I personally think that the absurdly low entropy levels in the text make it very unlikely that any actual language is intended. And the fact that those entropy levels are so low makes it so that even if there is a language there, it cannot actually have much in the way of content. Because you need a certain level of entropy in a message in order to actually express linguistic meaning. And I think the Voynich manuscript falls well below anything that could be reasonably counted as linguistics. But hey, I'm not a linguist and I'm not a Voynich manuscript expert. It's just that when I have investigated people's ideas about this, and I've gone through what work they've shown and whatnot, that seems to me to be the most compelling conclusion about the Voynich manuscript, is that it's a hoax, and there is no linguistic content, but that it was made to look as if there were. I could be wrong. My Infinite Journey for $6.66 says, Hail Nero, hail Daps, Vish, and Dr. Kill, and hail the linguistics hobby. And then for $5, Liz D says, Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious is irreducibly complex, and AIG is a bag of Kentovins. Thank you very much. Take a drink. Annoyed Dapper when DMing. Cast sending in Sumerian. Yeah, that's actually a good point. So sending in D&D... Oh, by the way, thank you for your 20 super chat. So sending in D&D is a spell in which you are allowed to send a certain number of words. But the problem is that this is something that is like written by native English speakers for native English speaking audience. But then the question comes like, okay, well, what about other languages? Because like, I could send like a very complex sentence in like 3 words if I'm going with like Inupiaq, right? Like, what does this mean?
Yeah.
Because like I could send in the course of like 3 words, like in Inupiaq, a sentence like, so out when my brother was hunting caribou and he came across a pond, there was a large trout in it and he caught that instead. And that could be like 3 words in Inupiaq. Like, so what do you do with
Maya's
that?
like that.
Exactly.
Well.
To some extent, even Turkish can be like that. Turkish can get a lot of meaning into one word. So like, yeah, it's one of the things with what is a word? There is no answer. There is no answer that works cross-linguistically, right? You can say, what's a word in English? And that can work. But if you try to export that definition to other languages, it falls apart.
I don't know. It's almost like so-called evolutionary models are the best ways to help us conceptualize and explain these things. Dapper.
Oh, here's a fun exercise. If you want to know just how badly defined the word is, think about how you would apply the definition of word that is commonly used to languages, like not even crazy exotic languages that you've never heard of. French. Here's a fun fact. The only reason that we analyze French as a fusional language is historical. If you were to come at French from a completely like blank slate, all you have is linguistics theory, and you've never heard of French, you don't know what its linguistics origins are, you're not aware of its spelling conventions or orthography, you would probably put the grammar of French as more like the grammar of like an Alaskan native language and being polysynthetic than you would a fusional language. And you would probably say that most sentences consist of 2 to 3 words. Because French violates the word boundary conditions that most European languages use, and instead has all these cross quote unquote word syntactic, or not syntactic, but phonotactic rules that modify how words are pronounced in association with other quote unquote words. Guess what that means? That means that by most definitions, those aren't words, those are affixes. And you're affixing different suffixes and prefixes to words to create big long words. So, like,
Yep.
the definition for word that we use for most languages, like Spanish or English, doesn't even work in French, which is not some kind of crazy obscure language. So, like,
But
no, word is.
I mean,
stupid.
it even comes challenging in English, right? Like all you have to do is go through an English verb paradigm to recognize that,
It's
like,
nonsense.
it is. Like, is a pluperfect English verb a word? Because but you have to actually combine what we would ordinarily consider to be individual words to make that, right?
Yep.
Like,
also, Mayan Finnish Sock says, "Don't fake glossolalia. Like and share instead." What would it mean to fake glossolalia though? Because like it's all fake.
Speak glossolalia.
Okay. All right. Kip, if you want to continue.
Yes, the claim is that the first proto-language came about nearly 2 million years ago with Homo erectus.
All right,
Very
we have to
excited
check.
see this footnote.
I have to check it.
That's the claim from W. Tecumseh Fitch, The Evolution of Language, New Scientist. Oh, he's got a URL there too.
Ooh.
Available online.
Can I? Oh, I can only click it. I'll click it in a new window so it
Let's
doesn't
see
interrupt
what happens.
All right. Becoming it. No, it doesn't work. It redirects you to the New Scientist homepage. Thanks, Bodhi.
Oh, okay. Yes, thanks, Bodhi.
Cool.
That's great.
Great.
But I'm
We'll scroll back
dubious about this. For the reader, thanks. For the reader, Homo erectus is a name evolutionists have given to a group of humans who lived and were buried in post-flood sediment.
Just drink.
This is
Of course.
horseshit.
This is purely a guess. That's all. Just a guess. Nothing beyond a guess. All guesswork here. Based on the story of evolution and millions of years. Christians should beware of humanistic ideas like this and the that's rich, the arbitrariness behind them.
Projection of the highest order.
Right.
Wasn't Bodhi the one who was like, hey, maybe Basque is just a made-up language that someone came up with one day? Okay, we got a few super chats in here. Rochelle Lipstick Equus Keller for 199 says German words. Yeah, German is another language where like they like to string a bunch of words together without spaces, but are those really one word, or are they compound words, or it's not clear. Metageeky Platypus Warlock for $2 says Welsh wizards wreck the weave with word wasteness. Thank you very much. It's very alliterative. And also, I do like bringing in like the Forgotten Realms magic system with the weave. In case you guys didn't get that one, it's a Forgotten Realms reference.
I will say this. I think DM Wing's comment, is it even a citation if it doesn't include a phone number? That's pretty funny.
Kip, are you familiar with Cantoven's favorite form of citation?
Probably, but refresh my memory.
So, his favorite kind of citation in his talks that he puts up online is different than in his thesis, which is just to say like KJV, get book title, and then just continue on.
Yes.
But in his
his
talks that he puts
slides.
on his slides, his favorite form
On his
of
slides,
citation
yes.
is
It's just
this
a name
guy's
and a phone number.
yeah, this guy said so. You can call him and ask.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's just like, what is happening? And my favorite one though was at one point he was trying to talk about like some oil drilling up in like Barrow, Alaska, going through like 500 or 300 feet of petrified wood or something. And his citation was, "A guy on a boat told me." It's like, oh, okay.
Nice.
A guy on a boat told you one day. Sure. Guy on a boat, the well-respected scholar.
Yep.
Is that how it appears? Is a guy? I was told this by a man on
Well,
a
I mean,
boat.
he's speaking all of this, but yeah, that's the source that he
Oh,
says.
he's speaking.
Yeah,
Right.
he's
yes,
like,
of
Yeah.
course.
Yeah, I met a
Yes,
guy
this
on-
is part of his.
I was on a
I met
boat
guy on a
watching.
boat.
I was on a boat watching what is it? Ice flows calve, right? He was watching like glaciers calving
Right.
into the ocean, which is cool.
Yeah.
I mean, I would like to do that. That sounds like a fun time. But he's like, yeah, I got talking to this guy on the boat, and he said he was in Barrow, Alaska, and he drilled through 300 feet of petrified wood. I'm like, okay, sure, Kent.
Just gotta believe everything everyone tells you.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
That's the best.
As long as it confirms your current biases, then you believe everything that anyone tells you. Anyone who tells you something that doesn't confirm your current bias automatically rejects.
Me is bringing up a good point. Kent uses the Apostle Paul's method. 500 people saw it. You can go ask them.
Except I don't think that's even why Paul decided to invoke the testimony. Well, it's not even testimony of 500 people who saw the resurrection, was so that you can go talk to them. His whole point was 500 people saw the resurrection, and some of them have died, which was a big problem, right? This was the problem in his letter to the Corinthians, is people are dying.
And Jesus said,
where's
some people
the
would see him come
resurrection?
back.
And
Yeah.
well, not just that, it was people are dying. You know, aren't they supposed to be resurrecting from the dead in their new resurrection bodies? What the hell's going on
They're
here?
all zombies.
So Paul's making the point of, look, these 500 people who saw Jesus are like way better than you schmucks. And a bunch of them have died. So settle down.
We got a $5 super chat from Heather Talks to Randos on Trainscoon, who says, computer language evolution is largely a process of increasing abstraction, ignoring C and similar. I wonder how much of this applies to natural languages. So it is always iffy to draw parallels between natural human languages and computer languages because they're written or created and used for fundamentally different purposes. So I don't know if I could answer that effectively. But I am always cautious about drawing any connection. Because really, computers do not process information the way that humans versus computers process information in fundamentally different ways. And so, while computer languages are written to be like human readable, there's a reason that no one is like doing like the C+ translation of Romeo and Juliet.
That's cursed.
You just kind of can't. Whereas you can do a German or a French or an Arabic translation of Romeo and Juliet. That's just fine. Sure, you'll lose some of the poetic nature of Shakespeare's like iambic pentameter and whatnot. And the puns. Although, to be fair, most of the puns in Shakespeare are gone already anyway because no one speaks like Shakespeare anymore.
Nobody understands them, yeah.
So, turns out
Unless
Shakespeare...
you get a good theater company that understands how they pronounced it and they bring those puns back, which is always my preferred way.
Also, interestingly enough, most of the puns that we don't get anymore are pretty much all dirty puns. It's like, oh, you didn't notice this bit about prostitutes? Yeah, it's in there. Like, oh, okay, all right. So a few other things. Homo erectus. Homo erectus is a group of organisms with a clear set of like morphological characteristics that are found together to the exclusion of other populations that we know of, and we have some proteomic data for them, and we know that they're just not the same species as sapiens. So Bodhi pretending otherwise is just him lying to you. Or maybe just being an idiot. I'll go with him being an idiot. I've not seen any evidence that Bodhi has tried to understand human evolution, so he's probably
they were buried in post-flood sediment.
Well, here's the problem with that. There is no such thing as pre or post, or There's no such thing as
I was
pre-flood,
gonna
mid-flood,
ask
or
what that
post-flood.
is.
So basically,
Where's that line?
Basically, for answers in Genesis, the pre-flood stuff is before the Cambrian. Then from the Cambrian on until the end of the Cretaceous is all stuff from the flood. And then from the Cretaceous on, they say it's post-flood. So basically all he's saying there is that these humans were buried after the dinosaurs went, well, the bulk of the dinosaurs went extinct. It's like, yup, that sure is true. But here's the other thing. There is no consensus in young Earth creationism as to where that boundary is between the flood sediments and the post-flood sediments. Because fundamentally, the sedimentation doesn't change, right?
Oh, Dapper, we also dunked on Andrew Snelling a lot last night.
Nice.
Yeah, Paul
Always
was
good.
calling him out for being a liar. He was like, "Oh yeah, he's done proper, published work on geology," and then just
Sure.
in his private life goes, "Oh yeah, but the Earth's actually really young." And why weren't you in the stream? It was so good.
No one told me to get in there.
That's the key to being a successful apologist, you guys.
So here's the thing, guys. I struggle to watch debunk type streams in my off time because it feels like going to work. And it's not to say that I don't enjoy
Art Bell and getting drunk and telling a bunch of going on a bunch of tangents.
What do you think my job is? What do you think my job is? That's the thing. It feels a little bit like work, which means if there's something I really need to know about that's on a stream like that, y'all should alert me. Send me a DM. Any of you who are in my Discord server, you can send me a DM because we have a shared server. Because it's not that common that I'm in a live chat for such a stream, just because I do it a lot on my own. And when I'm not currently streaming, rather than do debunk stuff, I usually like go play a video game or read a book or do an art
stuff. You're just listening to Art Bell and they're shooting the shit.
If they're complaining about how dishonest Andrew Snelling is, then that's debunk stuff.
It was a tangent. It wasn't debunking.
Savage Mayan Ziggurat Cobra says for $4.99, the line is where it is currently convenient to be. Yeah, that's basically what it comes down to, is wherever it causes the fewest problems to the particular creationist in question. I just the counter here, so we'll take a drink for Dapper's Professional. Is where it tends to be. And one of the things that I was about to say is there's no consistent like actual answer. So you'll get like the Institute for Creation Research has a very what I would call a very late flood boundary, where they basically think that everything like before the Pleistocene is flood stuff. So they think that most of the Cenozoic is flood stuff, and that only stuff like from the Ice Age on isn't, which causes problems because then it means that there are currently like limestone caverns which bury pre-flood things, but you can't have limestone caverns under a flood. So like, but then again, there's all sorts of stuff you can't have under a flood. It's full that the geological column is full of anyway. So I guess who cares? If you think you saw a giraffe, no, you didn't. For 500 Argentinian pesos, says, what are these hominis erecti you're talking about? My organization has done a very thorough job to hide them. You shouldn't know about them. Once we learn about your address, we'll pay you a visit and ask you very nicely not to mention them again. So this is a reference to, I don't even remember his name now, but there's a guy who's done some talks on Answers in Genesis, and he has this thing where like, oh, amazing creatures, and that evolution can't explain, which is basically just, he's like, hey, look at this animal. It's really cool. Therefore, no evolution. He never actually connects this to an argument or anything. But he also has this weird thing where he says that the animals he's talking about are being hidden from people by Satan so that you don't learn about all these cool animals that disprove evolution. Except that some of the animals he talks about are just like the giraffe. And it's like, I don't think Satan is hiding the giraffe from people. I don't know. And he's like, the only reason you haven't heard of the binturong is Satan. And it's like, no, it's just an obscure carnivoran from a part of the world I don't live in that's not really big. So like, haven't heard of it. All right. We should get a little bit more of this text in before we go on break, because we've had very little of it.
Perhaps. But beware, Christians, of the arbitrariness of these crazy ideas. But researchers are trying to find commonalities, especially with grammar, and have produced.
You just said they weren't doing that, Bodhi.
Right. Yes.
Whatever.
One such model is called universal grammar, or UG.
This is Noam Chomsky's big like pet idea.
Yeah, right. It is but one attempt that still falls short, as many researchers rightly recognize that with the diversity of language and without massive exceptions, such may not only be improbable, but perhaps impossible. So what
does that sentence
kind of
mean?
a sentence is this?
I don't even know what he means.
What is improbable, but perhaps impossible?
That UG exists.
One attempt still falls short, as many researchers rightly recognize that with the diversity of language and without massive exceptions,
This doesn't mean anything.
one attempt that still falls short may not only be improbable, but perhaps impossible. Am I reading that right?
Yeah, Bodhi, that's not a real sentence, my guy. That's not a real sentence. I'm not even sure what you're trying to get at. Look,
no clue.
Universal grammar is I'll try to summarize it. I'm probably going to summarize it to the point that I'm not actually giving it a fair shake. But basically, Noam Chomsky has this idea that there are certain aspects of the way that humans process information from a biological standpoint that hardwire certain aspects of linguistics. His most famous example is recursion, where you can say that, like, oh, I have the mug that I bought on the store that I found on Tuesday. That was the third Tuesday in the month that is the second month of the year that is the 100. And you can just keep going by adding that and then continue the sentence recursively. He's got the idea that recursion is a universal characteristic of human languages. There has been some pushback to even that. And he has other ideas that are like supposed to be universal, and other people have put pushback to those ideas. But like the idea that like there's only one language or one form of grammar is not something that Noam Chomsky is saying. I don't know what Bodhi is going for. Now, it's been a while since I looked into UG as to see like what its current status is, but last I checked in to see what people were saying about UG, it was not being it was not as highly regarded, say, as it has been in the past. And there are a lot of people who are like, I'm not sure we can actually identify anything that's truly universal in human languages. Okay. I don't know what Bodhi is complaining about, or even trying to say. Narondabutz, who's been a member for 15 months, and is at the tetrapod level, says, butchered language in an attempt to explain language. Yeah, basically.
Yes.
Like, that's not even a comprehensible sentence, man. Whatever.
No. I laughed way too hard at Alex Merkel's comment that Saint did a piss poor job of hiding tits, boobies, and woodcocks. True.
All right, you want to keep going, or should I pick up?
I'll keep going. One must understand that the secular humanistic community must have a story in place to make sense of languages, speech, written, and sign. Really? You can't make sense of sign languages without the story. It was like this with the old Greek mythologies. They needed to have stories to explain why the sun took a particular path in the sky. In the same way, evolutionary storytelling is a necessity when looking at real issues like languages. Does Bodhi, I mean, clearly, Bodhi is unaware that, like, the Genesis creation stories are, like, etymologies, right?
Do you mean etiologies?
Etiologies, sorry.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, because they're not etymologies, although that would be interesting.
No, correct.
No, he doesn't realize. We've got a couple things to read out, and then we're going to go on a quick break. Savage Mind Ziggurat Cobra for 199 says, hashtag not a linguist. Correct, I'm not a linguist. Although I recognize the degree to which I do not beat the linguist charges, and that many a jury might convict. Maintain my innocence. We got
You don't have to plead no contest.
Yeah, basically. Ben Thick Tunica has gifted 5 memberships. We're going to take drinks for those when we come back. Another thing is, I really want to point out that Bodhi actually doesn't seem to have any problems with any of the actual mechanisms of linguistics. And it's kind of like with evolution, right? Like, Bodhi is like, oh, I don't believe in evolution, except, for the things coming off of the Ark and needing to hyper-evolve in ways that are so fast that no one who actually accepts evolution could possibly accept that anything happened quite that quickly. We're talking like we need proboscideans to have not just a new species every generation, but every new calf needs to be a new species that isn't the same species as the previous calf. Like that kind of level rapid evolution. And of course, proboscideans are an outlier in terms of how fast their evolution would have to be, but like it just highlights the problem, right? And the same thing is here. Like, does Bodhi think that languages don't change over time? No. Does Bodhi think that languages aren't related via common ancestry to ancestor languages? No. So what is it that Bodhi's objecting to? Basically, people who aren't just defaulting to, well, the first language families came out of Babel, and that's it. And he doesn't have a reason to object to that other than to say, well, they're stinky poo-poo heads who accept evolution. Okay, that's not a reason, but sure, you don't have to like people who are, not ignoring science. But like, just pointing at them and being like, meh, they're evolutionists, they're secular humanists, you can't believe what they say. That's not an argument, Bodhi. That doesn't mean anything. That's just you not liking people. Which you're free not to. Bodhi, if you ever watch this, you don't need to like me. I'm okay if you don't like me. In fact, I expect that you really don't like me if you knew about me. Although I don't think he does. I know that most of the people at the DI have at least heard of me because my name has appeared in the storied halls of Evolution News. So, they did take actually
you and your deplorable ilk.
Twice now. I think. Oh no, one was on Creation.com. Wow. I've been on Creation.com and Evolution News. So I guess at least like ICR knows who I am. But anyway, like, yeah, I don't expect you guys to like me. It's fine. But, like, that's not an argument. Right? Like, make your argument and then talk about how they're mean, stinky poo-poo heads. But you have to make the argument first, right? Pillowpunk, half dog, half canine for $5 says, you have the aptitude to pursue a career in linguistics if you wanted. That's true. So is there a reason you're not a linguist? I don't want to go back to school. That's it.
That's fair.
I am so done with school. Between like going from high school into the Navy and going through nuke school, then going to get a 4-year degree. And once I was done with my 4-year degree, I was like, I don't want to keep doing school. I don't want to keep taking tests, having classes, reporting to professors, having paper deadlines. I don't want to do it. It's
funny because I'm pivoting to go back into like higher learning.
And look, that's great.
But that's only after like a 20-year break.
Yeah,
that's how burned out I was.
And here's the thing: so if anyone here wants to go back to school, please do not take my reluctance to keep going to school as like a reason not to. That is a personal thing for me. You do not need to share in that feeling, and I would encourage you.
Also because I would be a much better student now. I understand how I learn and synthesize information much better now. I've lived a little, so there's a lot more that I'm prepared to understand. So, yeah, it's just a better set of stats overall now for me.
There was a question. New school is 6 6 months or a year. Actually, it was a year and a half. It was about 6 months for A school, another 6 months for power school, and then 6 months of like practical hands-on actually operating a nuclear power plant in a
show the puppy
training situation. In fact, the nuclear reactor the nuclear power plant that I worked on for training, I believe at the time was like the dirtiest reactor in like the United States. So there was that. Didn't matter much because it was still pretty darn clean because U.S. reactors are extremely clean and safe. Let's see. DM Carl Ipsumwing says all you have to do is publish. Yeah, but then I would actually have to start a research program in a linguistics field, and I also don't want to do that. I'm already busy enough, and have little enough time to decompress. A Coyote says, more importantly, do you want to be a linguist for a living? Like, if I imagine that as like my job, it doesn't seem terrible. But do I currently want to do what it would take to pivot to that? Not really. All right, so we're going to take a quick break. I'm going to refresh this coffee, get some more whiskey into it. And it was not in Idaho, but...
That dog is great.
But yeah, we're going to...
He's a little pent up.
Yeah.
I've been away for a week, so,
How
But
dare
He's
you?
like, play with
nothing.
me. Give me attention.
Yes. So he's been had nothing but, young adults looking after him who clearly need to do a better job. But
Well, we're gonna take a
All right.
quick break. We will be right back, and in the meantime, please enjoy the musical stylings of Beethoven. All right, we are back, and now I see that we have a new problem in chat because Chesh is here. Chesh is always the problem. In fact, actually, yesterday we did our lower deck style episode of Star Trek Lexington, our Let's Play, where everyone played a lowly lower decker. Highest rank was lieutenant. Most people were ensigns, and Chesh had to go to page 135 in the rulebook and look at like one column of text in order to create her lower decks character, and this took her approximately a week and a half. And so, for a while I had the lower deck style intro with the cel-shaded ship and the new names, instead of a name for her character, I just had Chesh as the problem, and that is currently what is unlisted for my players to see as a reference for what the new credits would look like for that one episode. So love you,
since we're
Chesh.
talking about tabletop real quick, I just want to
tracks.
say, on last night's Toast to Toast, they were discussing what we do in the shadows and how apparently in that universe, like, there aren't very many old vampires because after a while you're like, this is it. I've done everything there is to do. F this, and you just get depressed and like either kill yourself or walk in the
Off
sun.
yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, and
We're not
this
staying
was the perfect
monetized.
opportunity for me to say, skill issue. Should have gone into torpor. That's what the antediluvians did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right, now we have 5 memberships gifted from Ben Thicktunic before we went on break. So let's take 5 drinks for that now that I have fresh and hot coffee. Because my coffee was
Eggnog latte.
yeah, out of eggnog. 1, 2. Oh, that's a lot of whiskey. I had a whole extra shot of whiskey. 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay, look, guys. After the break, big thing. You guys know that your direct support is pretty much the only reason I can afford to stay doing this 3 times a week and spending hours and hours each week doing like research and editing and scripting and whatnot. If you want me to keep being able to do that, and you can afford it, and you enjoy the channel, there are ways to give me money if you want to. There's the Patreon. There's the channel memberships. Patreon's linked in the description. Bish and Kip both have Patreons. They're linked on their channels. Their channels are linked in the description. I think at least Vishanti has an Amazon wishlist. I don't know if Kip does. But Kip, get an Amazon wishlist. Maybe you'll get, I don't know, free rice like I did. You know, I haven't paid for my own rice in like 3 years.
That's amazing.
Yeah, well, people keep sending me way too many 15-pound bags of rice as a joke. So,
Yes.
I remember one time, like,
Man,
4...
a 15-pound bag of rice is about 5 weeks supply for me, so...
Well, I remember at one point, 4 of them showed up in a day, and I was like, I don't even know where to put these.
Yeah.
So some of them just stayed on top of the counter because I didn't have anywhere else to put them. I'm now currently down to 2 bags of rice. You need more rice, says the chat.
DM Carl Ipsumwing wants to know if you need more rice.
Yeah, so does Jillian Rock Candy Mammoth. Currently, no. But keep an eye on my Amazon wishlist. If it goes off of low priority, then that means yes. But yeah, those are some great ways. There's also Dapper merch if you want to get some merch. I also want to say...
Is it short grain rice or is it like
This is long grain.
basmati
This is
or
basmati rice.
jasmine?
I have basmati on my wish list because I really like basmati rice.
I really like basmati rice too, but I often never get it because my kids prefer the short grain stuff. So yeah.
Big Degree says
Kids
sounds like he's running.
Don't have kids, guys.
All right. There you go. There's life advice from
I'm
Dr.
doing good
Kill.
on that so far.
That's my rant for the day.
So yeah, feel free to support if you want to. Maya says 15-pound bags. Why? I don't understand the question.
What do you mean, why 15 pounds? I'm like, I go get a 20-pound bag at H Mart across the street.
Yeah, like rice is the kind of thing you buy in bulk. If you're if you're not buying 10 or more pounds of rice, why are you buying rice? Yeah, I don't know.
Terry Brown is like, just be a Malkavian, life never gets boring again. And then Nee follows up with, unless you're Malkavian, Tsamichi, Tsaluot, or La Sombra, each of which have become transcendent in their own ways. Like, yeah, I guess. Tsaluot.
You know, I still like my idea of the Trench Crusade Vampire the Masquerade Chronicle. Because apparently Vlad the Impaler and the Order of the Dragon are officially part of Trench Crusade. So,
That's my homie.
there you go. Yeah.
We're in the same order.
Yep. All right. So,
Yep, did you know that I'm actually a now defunct Eastern European from a now defunct Eastern European noble house?
Wow, that's an exciting development.
she's been sworn to protect the Eastern Orthodox Church from the Turks.
Wow,
Yeah.
I have the letters patent
Excellent.
and everything. I'm a Dame Baroness. Thank you very much.
sweet. Wow.
All right. Would you like me to continue, or would you like to?
I don't know. I'll just read if you continue giving me the opportunity.
So why don't you finish up
if-
this
if
section,
somebody-
and when it gets to Coco, I'll pick up.
All right. I don't think we got there, did we?
Oh, okay.
We
Yeah.
can simply we can now so we can speak simply. There should be a comma here, really.
There
think.
should. We can speak
But-
comma simply because.
Yes, but I'm going to read it the other way. We can speak simply because the Creator made us in His image to communicate with Him.
So God has a simple mind. Got it.
There you go. We can think, reason, and be creative in ways animals simply never could.
I mean,
But-
except for humans who are animals.
Still
Yeah.
animals. But an unbelieving secular community has
Ooh.
refused to allow God in the door. Shouldn't it be through the
Sorry
door?
about it.
So they must come up with stories. That's all we're doing is just coming up with stories
How do you keep God
to try
out?
to explain
Like-
language.
How do you keep God out of your house, though?
Projection.
Like, do you put does garlic work on God? If I put garlic on my door, does God not come through?
Yeah, that
Only
I
if you have
may,
true
maybe.
faith.
Okay.
Yes. Sorry. And so they appeal to animals because they believe we are simply animals.
All right. Hey,
we
quick.
are.
They appeal. Look at this
I mean, yeah.
monstrosity. So they appeal to animals because they believe we are simply animals for answers.
Yeah, that parenthesis should be at they appeal, and so they appeal to animals for answers. Then put the
Yeah,
parenthetical.
they should have rearranged that. Yeah.
I'd also
That's
like to
probably
point out that he used the word simply 3 times
in like two
in
sentences.
this 3-sentence
Two sentences?
abomination.
Okay. Yeah. Not great style.
That's his tick. It's like
So-
H bomber guy using. It turns out
Yeah.
this is his tick.
Okay, so here's what we're gonna do though.
But
We're
I
gonna do a
think-
quick check. Are we animals? All right. Kip and Bashanti, we're gonna check it to see if you're animals. Okay. Are you multicellular?
Yes.
I believe so.
Okay.
Yes.
To your knowledge, do your cells have cell walls?
I
Yeah.
believe so. Yes.
Wait, you do have cell walls?
I think so.
Well, now you might be fungus. So this is confusing to me.
Uh-oh. Do I not have cell walls?
I don't know. I've never checked your cells.
I'm just answering yes to all the questions because I'm an eldritch being.
Okay, well maybe Vishanti is part fungus. Kip, are you sure you have a cell wall?
I'm 3 gods in
I-
a trench coat. Remember?
Dapper, I haven't taken I did biology in my
That's a
second
spoiler.
year.
Humans do not have cell
Okay.
walls.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Okay,
No, I do not have cell walls.
there we go. Do you
Yeah, I'm with
gain...
Metageeky. My cells have emotional walls. Thank you. Very
There you
much.
go. Do you require the digestion of other organisms in order for you to stay alive? Or can you make your own food by just breathing and standing in the sun?
No. Yes, I require
I have to eat
the
other
consumption
organisms.
of other organisms.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well then, it sounds like you're an
Oh.
animal. Based on, what an animal is.
Maya says I have cell membranes.
You do have cell membranes, that's true.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's good to know.
Well, so here's
So
what we've
I-
learned.
Trifurcation says my cells have padded walls.
So what we've learned is that humans, generally speaking, are animals. Vishanti might be a fungus. And yeah. Although it's weird because I've seen Vishanti eat and she didn't extrude a bunch of stringy cilia onto the food and then digest it externally while sucking in the nutrients into the cilia. So that was weird.
Maybe like I have these spores
Mhm.
that make you hallucinate that you didn't see me do that.
I think that's
Okay.
my explanation. But listen, I'm going back. I'm coming back to this first sentence here because I feel like this is something that Jesus might have said. We can speak simply because the Creator made us in His image to communicate with Him. I mean, that sounds an awful lot like suffer the little children not
It
to
does sound a
come
little
unto
Jesus-y.
me,
Yeah, I could see it.
right?
Oh god.
Unless you approach as a child, you cannot inherit the kingdom of God.
Hydroid says, I
Unless
wish
you
I was
speak simply.
autotrophic.
Yeah, being autotropic would be really cool. All right.
Yeah.
Let's
My
get
Atkinson
this.
says, does Ashanti only do that when I'm around?
Let's get this last paragraph in, which is what, 2 whole
Okay.
sentences?
2 whole sentences. Due to evolutionary presuppositions, they assume that man evolved from ape-like ancestors. So apes today should be the closest things to us and hence to human language.
God.
This brings up studies on apes like Coco who were able to learn certain signs.
So,
this is gonna
I feel
be
like
fun.
most people in my audience have seen the video about weapons grade Uftonium and Coco and whether or not she could actually speak. And that
I
video
haven't
is
seen that one.
that video is largely correct. When people who were in fact signing humans who knew American Sign Language were introduced to Coco or observed Coco, they could not make out signs. When Coco was signing, there were just a whole bunch of hand gestures that were her handlers were interpreting as signs, but that didn't seem to, even with the interpretation, make any particular sense. They just seemed to be a bunch of things until Coco eventually got a reaction, which means that what Coco was probably doing was noticing that she got attention and treats when she made gestures with her hands, and then she would try as many gestures as possible to get a reaction that was positive from the only social group she had, which was her caretakers.
Yep.
And they were also the only way she got food. So, of course, she made as many crazy hand gestures as possible to get what she wanted from them, which was attention and food. So, yeah, Coco probably didn't learn.
Figure that out really quick when they're in captivity, by the way. Like,
now,
I was watching a really adorable video last night of a sea otter who knows that when its handler goes up and boops it on the nose, that it can just tap the ground really fast and the handler will give it fish or squid, and it's very cute.
Yeah, well, sea otters are adorable. Unless you're watching them do their less adorable things in real time, in which case they're horrifying nightmares. But we just don't have to watch those
I mean,
parts.
they also are really good at depenning squid in like half a second. So,
I mean,
kudos to sea otters.
They're vicious predators if you're the wrong kind of animal. Or even if you're a human, there's supposed to be sea otter attacks on humans. Careful.
Those teeth are sharp.
Yeah, those are wild animals. They will bite you, and it won't be fun. I just lost my... a better example than Coco is probably Kanzi. And the reason that Kanzi is a better example is because, one, the utterances that Kanzi makes via his symbol board actually do tend to have some kind of correlation to what's going on. He is more obviously able to follow directions to do things like put water in a pot, put pasta in a pot, turn the stove on, things like that. He's been known to start his own fires with a lighter, to start a campfire, to roast marshmallows all on his own. I mean, obviously the marshmallows are provided and the lighter is provided, right? He didn't make those. But like,
that's pretty great.
You give Kanzi a lighter, a fire pit, and a bag of marshmallows, and he will gather wood, put it in the fire pit, start a fire, gather some sticks, put the marshmallows on it, and roast those marshmallows. So Kanzi would be a better option. And also, I
know a lot of people who struggle with just starting a fire.
Well, did they have a lighter?
Seriously.
Because he has a lighter. That makes it easier.
Well, no, I mean, like, what? So, what are we talking about here? Is he?
It's a little campfire.
Is he So he's arranging his kindling and his starter in such a fashion that it
Roughly.
will catch and burn, or
Yeah, it burns, but I mean,
does he understand that there's only certain elements that you can use when
I
you're
don't know.
when
He
you're
seems to
fire
live in
building?
he seems to live in a place where appropriate firewood is in abundance. So it might just be that he's in a very easy to build a fire sort of area.
Maybe. Wow.
But anyway, another reason
Very
why I
impressive,
think
though.
Kanzi is a better example is because he's using a symbol board. There isn't really a question as to whether
Right.
or not he's just making a random hand gesture, or if he's pressing a button. If he presses the button, the word is spoken
Yeah.
by the speech synthesizer, and if he doesn't press the button, the word isn't synthesized. And no amount of him like moving his hands randomly is going to affect that speech synthesizer speaking the word. So that's why I think Kanzi is a much better option. Coco, I mean, I don't want to be too down on the researchers, although they did do some things that were ethically questionable. But
I mean, it's not as unethical
yeah,
as the dolphin experiment.
that's true. Although that was mostly unethical towards the dolphin, the Coco thing was mostly
Yeah.
unethical towards other researchers because of things like, hey, what if we just don't discourage this large ape's fascination with human nipples to the point that she's going to try to like pull them off of people? Yeah. You ever had to
Can
try
we
to get a
skip
titty
this
twister
section
from
and
a...
go to the next one? Because I just feel like he
Oh, he
debunked the
did.
whole thing.
He did do Kanzi. Okay.
No.
Yeah, we can skip this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can we just skip
there's
that?
Kanzi. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
He also
Conclusion.
cites himself,
Conclusion.
which, by the way, is hilarious
Does
to me.
he cites
Scroll up and look
himself
at the
in this-
footnotes.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, Bodhi, the fall.
16.
Bodhi Hodge, the fall of Satan.
Man is made in the image of God, whereas animals are not, and he cites himself.
What?
Ugh.
Why would you not just cite
not
Genesis?
wrong, though.
Why would you just not cite
You could just-
Genesis?
Yeah.
Just cite. I'm gonna
Yeah.
take a drink for Bodhi citing himself instead of just the plain text of Genesis, which makes this point for him. That is so weird. Although you know what point
Oh, wow.
Genesis doesn't make? That humans aren't animals, because there's no real conception of animal as a taxonomic category in Genesis. But in Ecclesiastes, animals and humans are connected as being more or less the same thing because they both live and die just the same way.
Oh.
So, if anything,
Conclusion.
I would say the biblical position is that humans are animals.
Conclusion. From a biblical perspective, is it feasible for 7,000 languages to develop from about a minimum of 78 root languages in 4,000 years? No probalo. The languages that came out of the confusion at Babel were root languages or language families.
Which he still hasn't defined.
Yeah, those root languages have varied, borrowing from other languages, developing new terms, phrases, and pronunciations, losing older words and phrases, and just like Germanic languages, have variations even in the ones known specifically as American English. But notice the contrast in the secular view, where we all allegedly evolved from rudimentary ancestors with a single primitive grunting language.
Which again is his straw man. That's his straw man.
Proto-language is not even close to the multitude of root languages that gave rise to languages of today. It is good to be Christian today, understanding languages from a biblical perspective instead of the world's faulty ideas.
I'm gonna take a drink.
But let's clarify a misconception. God is responsible for the languages, and it was due to judgment. Ellipses. So is having one language a bad thing? Philo, an early Jewish historian, hit the nail on the head when he said, quote, "For it was not the languages which were the causes of men's uniting for evil objects, but the emulation and rivalry of their souls in wrongdoing," quote ends. And consider what the Apostle Paul says about languages. There are, it may be, so many kinds of languages in the world, and none of them without significance. 1 Corinthians 14:10.
What is the point he's trying to make here?
I don't know.
Is it that we should have one language, or that multiple languages are bad, or that like Esperanto is
They're
evil?
all important.
Well, I mean, I agree with both Bodhi and 1 Corinthians that languages all have some significance. I don't know what to do with this. What does any of this mean? Also, I gotta point out, this this is just a straw man, because linguistics generally doesn't actually have a conclusion about this, because we don't have the evidence. And here's the problem, right? Unlike organisms, which can be fossilized, you can't really fossilize language until writing occurs. Writing is essentially the version of fossilization that happens with language,
Yep.
right? But we know that writing is something that is very uncommon to be invented. It's probably only been invented like, what, 5 times maximum in the history of humanity? Like, it was invented in China, it was invented in Egypt, and probably Sumeria. It doesn't seem like they're the same thing. It was invented in Mesoamerica, and it was probably invented on Easter Island, maybe? That's a big maybe, because we actually don't know the degree to which Rongo Rongo, the script from Easter Island, actually encodes linguistic data in a writing-like way. So, like, it looks like writing, and I will grant it as writing in order to get us up to 5. So we have, like, 5 plausible inventions of writing ever in all of human history. And we know that when it comes to actual linguistic data and what we can actually trace back, we actually can't go much farther back than a few thousand years before the earliest writing in terms of what we can actually reconstruct reliably. Which means that we have the entire further gulf of human existence in which languages were being spoken by people and were evolving and splitting, and I'm sure there were pigeons formed and speech communities merging and splitting and changing, all without our ability to actually reconstruct any of that. So what is it that, as a good scientist, a linguist does when confronted with that? They say, I don't know. I don't know if there's a single origin for human language. I don't know if there's a proto-world. I don't know if you can connect Indo-European and Afro-Asiatic languages. I know they have a lot of similar conventions, like they both have a masculine and feminine noun distinction. They both tend to be nominative accusative alignment. There's a lot of similarities. Does that mean that we can connect them? No, not necessarily. Like, or can we connect like Sino-Tibetan languages with like the languages spoken in like northeastern Asia, like in Siberia? I don't know. Maybe. Can we connect like languages from like Siberia to Alaska? Again, maybe. But that's the thing. Linguists aren't going to just say, well, yeah, that would fit with my worldview, so I'm just going to do it. Whereas that's all Bodhi's doing. And I want to point out also, when he says the 78 languages, or language families, there's no attempt to tell you what those are. He doesn't have a rigorous way for saying what counts as a family that comes out of Babel. We don't even know if he means Germanic versus Celtic versus like Italic versus Hellenic languages, or does he mean Indo-European? And, like, what does he mean by language families? Because he gave us a number, but that doesn't mean anything, right? Like counting how many clades there are. How would you even count that? So when Bodhi is saying he has a superior model, and that it's only the storytelling of the evolutionists that would make anyone think that, standard linguistics is real, he doesn't even have a model. You can't ask him anything specific about this. If you say, hey, Bodhi, was Proto-Indo-European a language that came out of Babel? I don't know what he would say, because he hasn't told us. Right? Like, is Athabascan a different one? I don't know. Is like...
Are you about to say that ancient Chinese tells the story of the Bible? Because
I'll bet he
that's
is.
where he's going.
I'll start this one. Postscript. An ancient Chinese language.
Oh.
Let's look at the significance of ancient Chinese characters, which we're all going to take a drink for. Characters are not a language. Have you ever met someone who was illiterate?
Mm-hmm.
Did you know that they could speak a language?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
That's how they ended up
amazing how
telling me
that
they were
works.
illiterate.
Yeah.
Right.
The spoken form of language is always primary, and it always comes before the written form of a language.
Mm-hmm.
The graphemes that are used to encode a language in a writing system are not the language. All right. Researchers... Sorry, I just got Ancient Aliens vibes. Some researchers contend...
Yes.
Yeah.
Young Earth researchers say... Researchers...
I had a question about this. Like, when he uses this word, researchers, is this
In what
his...
field?
Well, I'm wondering if this is how he identifies the so-called secular humanist community, or is this
No, I think
is this just more
I
generic?
think this is literally the
than
same
that?
thing as Ancient Aliens, where they say researchers to talk about people who are on their side, but who have no credentials and who
Oh,
are not published in any relevant actual literature. Like, some researchers contend that yes, aliens in fact did send the asteroid that killed the dinosaurs in order to wipe the slate clean so that they could, millions of years later, come and genetically engineer certain ape species and hybridize them with their alien DNA to create humans so that the humans could mine their gold. Some researchers contend. I'm like, oh, okay.
some researchers, yes.
That's what I think is happening
All right.
here. So researchers like
Continue.
Dr. Ethel Nelson, Dr. Ginger Tong Chok, I like that name, Dr. Ginger Tong Chok. That's a good name. And Richard
Great.
Broadberry, that sounds a little cartoonish, but have published extensively on the significance of this language. Is this
The language of Chinese characters.
Oh, I'm going to take another drink. That is such a stupid phrase. You call how some languages are built on images. No! Fuck you, Bodhi. Fuck you. No languages are built on images more graphic in style. Scripts are built on images, not languages. People in
Wow.
ancient
Like, go
Egypt.
outside and scream.
This
and
is all
Seriously.
kind of amazing, guys.
People in ancient Egypt didn't go outside and talk to their neighbors by like striking poses and holding up birds.
They were going bird. It was just like a Simpsons cartoon. Bird, man doing this.
Yeah.
Also, you better hope
stylus.
you better hope you're not like a woman who has to refer to a bull, because unless you have a actual human phallus handy, I guess you can't refer to bulls. Because that sign is in the word for bull in ancient Egyptian.
Yep.
So, yeah.
It's also a waste of water because there's a whole glyph where it's a jar pouring water out
There's like
on other
5.
things.
There's like 5 of those glyphs. They're just
So-
variations on a jar pouring
Yeah.
water.
Yeah, it's very wasteful. So
Many Chinese languages and dialects and other Oriental languages. Thanks, Bodhi. Just gonna
Brutal.
toss
When
in
was
some
this
casual
published?
racism. Like 2000s, man.
Oh my god.
Yeah, I'm gonna take a drink. There's
there's
no.
one thing you can depend on younger creationists for. It is the racism.
Also, I have to
Yes.
point out the fact that many East Asian languages have, as part of their script, Chinese characters is because of Chinese cultural hegemony. It's not an independent development in those places.
Why does like most of the New World speak Spanish?
They just independently invented Spanish separately all across South America. It's wild.
And like a handful of countries, Portuguese. Like, why is that? Checkmate.
English is different in that we use symbols to represent sounds that are rearranged into words and sentences. So an alphabet. Okay, thanks, Bodhi.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But these ancient Chinese characters being built on graphics.
Being built on graphics.
What-
Graphics.
What graphics
Okay.
card were the ancient Chinese scribes
he-
using?
I suspect he probably hasn't done much work investigating the origins of alphabets either.
Yeah, because spoiler alert, they also develop from graphic
Yes,
depictions
they
of
did.
just ordinary
Mhm.
objects.
Yep.
All right, so means
Okay.
something, and this makes it easier to see some significant. No, it doesn't. Look, remember one of the first streams that we did with Kip? We had this guy who was talking about like the actual deep meaning hidden behind Hebrew words, and how like this
Right.
yud means it's a
Yes.
hand,
Yep.
and this vav is a nail, and
Yes.
so like
Mhm.
Jesus is being nailed to the cross in like the name of God. Like, no, man, none of that. That is not how any of this works. It's not how Chinese works either. Many of the characters of the
So-
ancient Chinese. I'm sorry.
Hold on. Before you flip the page, because I want to point this out. This footnote here is to his citation from Philo. Ordinarily, if I'm citing Philo, I would actually cite
Cite
Philo.
Philo.
the work
Yeah.
of Philo, not this English translation.
Yeah, but Bodhi
of,
can't
like
cite
we
Philo.
don't even know what text this is from, right?
Right.
Because guess what, guys? Philo wrote a bunch of shit.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But
Like if you're citing
Bodhi can't
Josephus, you don't go to some like third party who's writing about
Bodhi
Josephus.
can't
You
do
put
that, though.
Josephus,
And go,
Antiquities, blah, 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 blah.
In order to do that, Bodhi would actually have to be able to read Greek.
No, he wouldn't. You can read this in English. Like I guarantee you, his English translation, the works of Philo,
Okay, it has
has
an internal.
each
Yeah, that's probably true.
individual work correctly identified and indexed. Like
Yeah.
it's not. This is not hard
Savage,
at all.
Savage Mayan Ziggurat Cobra for $4.99 says graphic linguistics is my passion. Nice. All right, so many of the Chinese many of the characters of an ancient Chinese dialect are built directly on Genesis.
This.
I knew it. Called it. Take a drink. Confirmed
Okay.
prediction.
So the character for boat was made up of 3 other characters: a vessel, 8, and mouth. Interestingly, in Genesis 6:8, the ark was a large vessel that had 8 people aboard, and only 8 human mouths to speak and feed. Yeah, a whole lot of other mouths, though. Okay, and also, it's just not true that the number 8 is in there. It's just not. Like, that's just a lie that someone made up. I don't think Bodhi made it up. The name of the one true...
Listen, sorry, I have to... The very first time I heard this, I was at a discipleship school in Auckland, New Zealand, and there was a very, very sweet girl there, a student who was Japanese, and she gave this presentation where she talked about Chinese characters. And I'll be honest, guys, when I was 19 years old, and high half the time, this was convincing to me.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I should be high for this then.
Maybe.
Yeah, really.
The name of the one true god that Chinese originally worshipped and sacrificed to was named Shangdi. Look, there is no such one true god that the Chinese originally worshipped. The Chinese group of deities, like many cultures' groups of deities, had a high god who was sort of in charge. But that's like saying that like Zeus is actually the same god as the one depicted in the Bible, and that it's perfectly fine. And that all the other gods, though, those were the additions. No, that's not how it worked. Well, let's see. The characters for Shangdi are the character for Emperor and Above/Heavenly. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
And?
Right?
Like,
yes.
I don't actually know if that's true, but even if it is, like, that seems pretty expected because, like many cultures, the Chinese conceived of heaven as being physically above them.
Scroll down to the citation, because I can guarantee you I've read through this book that he's citing. Yeah. Uh-huh.
There is
God's
no citation.
To the Chinese.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
What's it
there
called?
it is.
God's promise to the Chinese.
Oh, look, is this by is this the book by Ethel Nelson, Richard Bradbury, and Ginger Tongchok?
Yep. Who
yes,
together wrote Promise to the Chinese. Yeah, so that's exactly who he means.
The researchers.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if they're medical doctors.
This language is fascinating. Bodhi, you have yet to describe a language.
Yes.
I can't. Oh my goodness, I'm going to take another drink. Guys, writing systems aren't languages. Languages aren't writing systems. Some languages are associated with certain writing systems. Some writing systems are associated with certain languages. And some languages are associated with multiple writing systems. And some writing systems are associated with multiple languages.
You ever notice how, like, none of them discuss, like, Sanskrit, Devanagari, Kannada? None of the Vedas, like, all the different iterations of India's scripts and holy texts. Like,
yeah.
It's right there.
By the way,
it's just on the other side of Persia. This is not, like, another planet.
That's unwelcome nuance.
Of course.
Alex Markle says, is he referring to the Han in particular, or is he too ignorant to know that China is an ethnic monolith? So he is referring to the Han Chinese script, which is sort of the general script used by all Han Chinese languages, which is an example, by the way, of what I was saying, where some writing systems are associated with multiple languages. The Han Chinese glyphs are one such writing system, which is used by multiple languages. And so that's what he's referring to. He probably doesn't know that there are other ethnic groups in China that use other writing systems that are not based on Han characters. But yeah,
China is
interesting.
Whole again. Then it broke again.
Interestingly, another language group that has a lot of history in China is a Mongolian. And modern Mongolian is a language associated with many different writing systems, including the Latin alphabet, the Cyrillic alphabet, and more than one native Mongolian-produced alphabet. So, like, once again, languages and scripts are not the same thing. I quite like the vertical, top-down Mongolian like cursive
Doggy.
alphabet. Aw, look at him.
He's sleepy now.
Puppo.
All right.
That's a nice looking sholo.
Was the written form of this
tuckered
language
himself out.
developed by men as they left Babel or settled later on? Well, since we know how it developed in and around like the Yellow River, the Yangtze, and how it was originally very nakedly pictorial and was written on things like bits of wood and bronze seals. No, it wasn't something that they carried
Probably
with them.
not,
It was
yeah.
developed in situ. Because we have the entire history of the
language
Chinese
that got
script.
instituted in Babel, we may never know.
Yeah, but there is no doubt about the significance of the characters of this ancient Chinese. Bodhi, if that were true,
We may never know.
you would have been able to say, up here, you would have been able to say, linguists, Dr. Ethel Nelson, blah, 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 published in Linguistics Journal, rather than in these researchers published in a book by a Christian Chinese publishing house. Does such significance abound in other languages? Well, it doesn't even abound in Chinese, so no, probably not. According to, I'm gonna give the Trump version of this. According to 1 Corinthians,
1 Corinthians?
according to 1 Corinthians
1 Corinthians.
1,410, it may.
May.
Okay. For each language conveys meaning in what is spoken and received. Example information. What? And that in itself is significant. Oh, Bodhi. Does Bodhi even know English well enough to write a book?
No.
Is he literate?
I doubt it. He doesn't seem to be.
Will
Will we ever know
Sorry,
any
you
of
read
any
it.
extra significance in other languages? What does that mean? Only further research will one day be able to answer that. Okay,
Does
Bodhi.
this thing in my language mean anything in another language?
wait.
Only
Why-
time will tell.
Why did he choose to include this graphic of enclosure with 4 rivers or perfect garden?
Oh, he's trying to refer
I
this
I
to
mean, to
Eden.
me, this is just proving how ancient the Ravnos clan symbol was.
So this, I actually happen to know that this is a glyph that they say is representative of Eden, which is supposed to have 4 rivers flowing out of it, and he's saying that this is
Yeah.
actually the rivers flowing out because he is just making up the fact that this cross actually flows in 4 directions, even though the actual stroke is 1 downstroke followed by a right to left stroke. That's 2 different strokes. So the rivers actually don't flow out of the center. If anything, if they're rivers, they just flow. But anyway, yeah, it's just more of this like, hey, if I make up ideas that connect it to the Bible, then that means the Bible is more true than if I hadn't made up
But
ideas.
I mean, you and I recognize what he's doing here.
Mhm.
But like he doesn't talk about this at
Nope.
all
Yep.
in his text. He just throws it out there.
Yep.
And
It just appeals to looks like.
yeah.
Joshua Geese for $10 says, off to a kid's birthday party. We'll catch the rest later with a wavy emoji. Well, have fun. I hope that
Stay safe,
you have some
Joshua.
delicious cake. Delicious
Don't.
cake. All right, so what about extra biblical tables of nations and genealogies that go back to Noah?
Oh, this will be fun. Hmm.
Or past Noah.
So here's my question:
Right.
Is he going to include things like the genealogies of like European monarchs, which also do things like go back to Odin? Because like that would be interesting.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because so people might not realize this, right? So I'm gonna try to lay this out as carefully as I can so that people understand what I'm gonna be talking about either next week or a little bit this week, whoever, who knows. But if you are trying to establish a political legitimacy on the basis of your ancestry, and it is hard for people to check up on your ancestry, you can do this thing that professional linguists and historians and archaeologists call making shit up. And you can just say, this is my genealogy. And if you go much further than like 2 to 4 generations, most likely no one can check up on you. And so you can just say, I am Dapper, son of whomever, son of whomever, son of whomever, son of Noah. And as long as it's a reasonably plausible number of generations, no one can really call you out on that. That's why you can be a descendant of Odin and the ancient first king of Ireland who kicked out the pre-human godlike inhabitants in order to establish human rulership over Ireland. And you can also go back to, you know, Alexander the Great and Zeus and Freya, Who cares? Because it's all just made up. It doesn't matter. You just plug your genealogy into whatever myths are important to the people that you're trying to legitimize your rule over, and there you go. Because remember, the whole idea of like you have political legitimacy because of that, whatever follows the of is almost certainly bullshit. No matter what time it is,
I mean, and this
no
is
matter what year it
also
is.
why the Spanish colonizers married into the family of Moctezuma.
Yeah.
So
But guess
there are people
how
who literally have genealogies that go back that far, and there's like a very limited number of Mexican nobility because of this, and it was all just political.
But here's another thing. You know those Mexican noble families? They also had bullshit reasons for being in charge. They weren't special either. It's all just a bunch of fiction to say this group of people get to oppress this other group of people because the gods say so, or because this oppressed group of people gave their consent in some magical pre-birth situation, or whatever the hell.
Yeah. Divine Right of Kings is BS.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say all accounts for political authority are BS. There are none that aren't.
Yep.
Does that mean that we should have an anarchy? I'm not going to answer that question for you. But any account of political authority that you think you have that works, it doesn't. So, yeah, genealogies are just one of those ways that people make up bullshit that let them rule over other people, over whom they actually have no particular moral or ethical claim. That's all it is. All right. Bish, you want to start us off? We'll get a little bit of this in. At least probably down to, oh my goodness.
Oh, sweet.
Oh, no. Are you sure we want to start this
Oh.
whole new section?
No, not really. Maybe we should just end a little bit early.
This is going to be a lot.
Yeah, we're going to end a little bit early. We'll start with chapter 13 next time.
I've made
Okay.
tables like that before.
Yeah.
Do you have a special program that does it for you automatically? Because that'd be cool.
No, I wish. I had to do it. I had to do it by hand. But mine's super cool because when I do mine, it teases out the non-P source from the P
Nice.
source in that table. It's pretty cool.
I remember making a very, I guess, limited genealogy when I was looking through the story of Korah, because it doesn't make as much sense as a narrative until you realize that Korah is Moses' first cousin. And you go, oh, this is a family squabble over power.
Wow.
Like,
you know what I always think?
Oh, because, I mean,
That's
and like
pretty
he
cool.
goes, what makes you so special? We were all chosen to be priests and da-da-da. Why are you so high and mighty? And like when you realize, oh no, that's literally his cousin. Yeah. Yeah, that story makes a lot more sense.
Unfortunately, I now can't hear about that story without thinking of the people at Dinosaur Adventureland saying that Cindy was Korah and making Kent Moses, and that makes my skin crawl.
Gross.
Oh, yikes.
Yeah.
So yeah, I get this vibe from creationists and the ancient aliens people and a lot of these ancient conspiracy folks who seem to think that anything that was written down in antiquity must have happened, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
'cause
just
people in the past-
it's as if they can't imagine that people in antiquity enjoyed fiction just as much as we do,
or had imaginations
today. Or had imaginations, right? Like it's so crazy to me.
Or just lied in some cases.
That yes.
Like
people
sometimes
don't make up stories. What are you talking about? Everything we write is factually true. Comic books don't exist.
Savage Mind Ziggurat Cobra for $4.99 says, to be fair, if any of the Zeus legends are true, then probably 97% of the inhabitants of the Greek world can trace their ancestry to Zeus.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, yes. Zeus did like to get around. And then also, Alex Markle said, submit to the commune or be cast into the wilderness, Dapper. And I mean, yeah, to some extent, that is ultimately what actually is the case when it comes to political authority, right? It's like,
pretty much.
If you want to go live off the grid, maybe you can, but like, I depend on, you know, the cooperation of other people to keep myself alive. So, whatever. Okay, I'll deal with that. Does that make all the things that society does okay? The fact that I depend on it? No, it doesn't. Does that mean I'm still going to be part of that society? Yeah, it does. Although I would also point out that it is especially not okay when governments say you're not allowed to live off grid. Not okay with that. Like
Yeah.
if I'm out in the wilderness in land that is otherwise uninhabited, like scrounging for food and not using the electricity or anything, and someone comes by and is like, "Oh, we're from the IRS. We would like to tax you." No, that shouldn't
Nah.
be a thing. And
I'm good.
yeah. But anyway, I'm not going to do that because I wouldn't make it because I suck at all that stuff. So we will go on with what about extra-biblical tables of nations and genealogies that go back to Noah next time, where we will try to crane our necks in order to read sideways
The-
Or you can just
genealogies.
rotate the PDF.
you
like a
could
smart
you could
person.
rotate the page, can't you?
That's
I mean,
yeah,
I can
Yeah.
do that.
I can. I'm just making it jokes. I don't know. But hey, Vishanti, you have anything coming up on the internets that people might want to be aware
Well,
of?
I mean, as per usual, the audience knows that I'm behind, so
Mhm.
2024, for those of you music majors, there's a meme. I should post it on my community page where it's New Year, New Me, and it's two music notes, B and C flat. And I'm like, yeah, well, that attacked me.
Lieutenant Fitz
I
of
won't
Rage
explain.
says,
If
but
you don't understand it, you're not a music person.
Lieutenant Fitz of Rage says, but Dapper, didn't you live off grid millions of years ago? Yeah, well, there was no United States government trying to make me not live off grid, and that was millions of years ago.
There wasn't a grid.
Yeah. Plus,
I was years ago.
I was better at it millions of years ago because I knew which things were and weren't poisonous. But now, I don't know. You guys have all sorts of weird different things, and way too many frogs. Why do you have so many damn frogs?
Spaniards?
Well, I mean that too, but all right, Kip,
Now Kip can laugh at that joke too.
Kip, you got anything coming up that you want people to know about?
I mean, I should, right?
But you don't.
But I've nothing planned. I'm gonna get that. I gotta get back to work. I just got back, from my holiday, but I gotta get back to work on the second part of my child sacrifice conversation with Dan McClellan and
Is there going to be a
Keith
practicum?
Durrell. Is there going to be a practicum?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Making sure.
but yeah, I hopefully that's done in the next week. And then I was going to do a live stream this week as well. Cuz I saw this silly guy on Sean McDowell's channel just before I left. But now I might have to change my plans because my friend Dr. Joel Carrico went on Inspiring Philosophy's channel and said a bunch of silly things about Deuteronomy 32. So maybe I might end up doing that this week.
All right. Chesh points out everyone here is coming on Debate Hub soon, and I believe that is the case. I think.
I think so.
Prashanti, you're going on Debate Hub soon?
Am I?
I don't know.
Did I forget about this?
Maybe. You might want to consult with Chesh.
Yes, but Chesh, you need to remind me
Okay.
far more regularly than you do now.
I don't remember seeing any dates.
All right. Well, I have dates for what's coming up on this channel. So on Tuesday, we're going to be doing Kent with Bent. Either Bent or I will be wearing a tutu. I think he decided which one he wants to do, but we'll figure it out. Whichever one wears the tutu, the opposite will wear the tutu on the next Kent with Bent after that. Because we do owe you one with Bent wearing the tutu and one with me wearing the tutu. So there you go. I'll even put on my gross human suit to put the tutu on because it doesn't fit on my actual dinosaur self. So that'll be at Tuesday at 6 p.m. my time, so that's 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. Then on Thursday at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern, there will be the next part of the Casey Luskin series. The first part was Casey Luskin, alleged cannibal pervert. I'm not saying he is, I'm just saying there's questions. The second part is, does Casey Luskin drink urine? Not saying he does, but maybe. Asking questions here. Sources have indicated to me that he does in fact drink urine. But I don't know, just sources. And if you ask me what those sources are, I'm not going to tell you, just like he doesn't tell you about the sources he's using to try to say that human evolution is fake. So fair play on that one. So that will be, like I said, at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern. Then on Friday at 6 p.m. My time, so again, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern, we will be doing the next episode of Star Trek Lexington, The Whole of the Law. So come check that out. We will be back to using our main cast of characters for the most part. I'm sure some supporting characters have a fair chance of showing up, but for the most part, it will be players playing their main cast. There should be a trailer coming out for that soonish, hopefully, if I can, get off my my dinosaur butt and make the trailer. Then on Saturday, the plan is to be back doing this same bat time, same bat channel. So more Bodhi Hodge. I mean, chapter 13. Yeah. All right. Well, with that, I think that is
We're almost halfway through, eh?
Yeah, I think so.
Wow.
I mean, we skipped a fair bit at the beginning.
Incredible. Yeah,
So.
sure, but still.
All right. Well, if you have access to my Discord server and you're interested, Bent and I are going to be watching 5 episodes of Power Rangers Super Samurai on 1.25 speed. So come hang out for that if you want to. If you like one of the worst seasons of Power Rangers ever made. So, but it's stiff competition for the worst season of Power Rangers. I'll just say that. I recognize that as a fan. All right, everybody, thank you so much. We're going to get out of here. I hope you all stay safe. Have a wonderful rest of your weekend, and I will hope to see all of you on Tuesday.
Hey, before you leave, I just want to take a second to thank my patrons and channel members, especially those pledging $20 or above. Ben Tovand, Tapioca Weasel, Whispers, Elleron Teller, Ian Chen, Kelvin Brostick Van Manen, Landon Knoll, Mabdy Babdy, Sphincter of Doom, Wallace, Max Cherry, North Texas Fossils, John Ackerman, and Strawberry Vein. It's because of my channel members and patrons whom you're seeing on screen that this channel can stay afloat. Without you, it would all shut down. If you want to join the team, there's a link to join the channel below this video, and there's a link to join the Patreon in the description. On the Patreon, you can get a 10% discount for pledging annually, and either way, you get early access to virtually all of my scripted videos, often 3 to 5 months before they come out for the general public. Thanks for watching.